Hello and welcome. Good evening. You're watching Super 6 here on India Today. I'm Akshita, Nandagopal, and this evening, over the next 60 minutes, as we wrap up the big stories of the day, our focus particularly on a nationwide pan-India call to boycott two countries, Azerbaijan as well as Turkey. Why exactly are these two countries facing a boycott call in India? It's because of their open support for Pakistan. Through the course of Operation Sindoor, much after, you've had shocking statements that have come in from these two countries openly backing a terror state like Pakistan. So what has that led to? Well, first of all, details are poured out of how Turkey essentially supported Pakistan even in those attempted drone strikes on Indian soil. So we'll decode those details for you. And we'll put the spotlight on this entire boycott trend. Does it make a difference if you and I say that, look, we're going to boycott anything that's originating from Turkey? I'll be breaking that down for you as well. I'm Akshita Nandagopal. Let's begin. We're now naming and shaming every global trader, every country that's aided Pakistan in attempting to bleed India, a terror state. The two countries particularly who's being called out is Turkey and Azerbaijan. These two countries issued statements backing Pakistan. Let's show you first Erdogan, who is the head of Turkey, his latest statement. The president of Turkey, he's called the people of Pakistan his brothers. I'll quote for you exactly what he said. I'm quoting. While openly declaring our support for the brotherly people of Pakistan, we congratulate Pakistan on their patient, sensible, moderate attitude. I hope that the calm environment provided by the ceasefire will facilitate the resolution of all other problems, especially the water issue. That's the statement from Erdogan. So if there was any doubt of where really Turkey stands on this fight, that statement makes it crystal clear that he's 100% on the side of Pakistan. So the side of terror is what he's chosen. But it's because of this stand that today Turkey is facing a boycott call. How, you ask? Well, from a tourism boycott to their apples being boycotted, even Turkish companies. There's a growing chorus, a demand to crack down on all things from Turkey. And over the next 30 minutes, I'll be getting you all the updates on this nationwide movement against Turkey as well as Azerbaijan. Remember, the third country that's backed Pakistan is China, though China has been very careful in the stand that they've been taking. As far as Turkey goes, they've been very open, as you just heard there, the statement that I read out of Erdogan. Let's get you some of our updates and then we'll get you more analysis.
Turkey has been a military ally of Pakistan, and not only in terms of supplying drones that were used against India after Operation Sindoor, but the involvement of Turkish personnel in this attack has been also brought out by the intelligence agencies, with more details of two Turkish personnel being killed in this whole action after they tried to inflict damages to India with their drones. These drones included the Bayraktar TB2 drones, the Yeya drones, and some Chinese drones also. Specifically, more than 350 Turkish drones carrying payloads and ammunition were directed towards India across the western border in 26 different cities, which not only targeted the civilians but also the military infrastructure, the air bases on the western sector. All these attempts have not only been neutralized, but a very strong message has been sent across to Pakistan that the Turkish and the Chinese toys will not work in front of the air defense systems of India. But this has been notably taken up by the Indian government, that along with the drones, the Turkish personnel were involved in this whole exercise of attack against India by Pakistan. India may very soon take up the matter with Turkish government, and Turkey has been once again an ally of Pakistan, not only training but implicating and trying to damage Indian air bases and Indian civilians. Two personnel have been killed. More than 350 Turkish drones were directed towards India. This is Shivani Sharma with camera person Pawan Kumar for India Today from New Delhi.
There is evidence, and we can clearly see that it's Turkey which is standing behind Pakistan. We, in fact, also saw Turkish-made drones. So they've chosen a side. We are now seeing the sentiment rising in India. A lot of people, earlier were really wanting to go to Turkey. That has stopped. Is that the sentiment that even you are getting from your customers? Ease My Trip is one of the biggest platforms we have in the country.
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on the show. And Aishwarya, we believe that we are one of the reasons who have created this trend. As soon as we realized that Turkey is siding on the wrong side of the history, Clearly, Pakistan is caught with pants down. UN designated terrorists, their generals, army people were there at the funeral of UN designated terrorists. And Turkey and Azerbaijan have chosen to support them in multiple ways. And India provides great amount of tourism to Turkey and Azerbaijan. Last year, almost 2.5 lakh passengers from India traveled to Turkey and 2.3 lakh passengers traveled to Azerbaijan. So as soon as we realized, we were the first travel company to put out travel cautionary note to all our consumers. Being the second largest travel portal, we felt it is our duty to put out the travel cautionary note to all our users to say that please go to neutral destinations and not Turkey and Azerbaijan like Thailand, Armenia, or Greece. And the results are boycott Turkey is trending online right now. The results are many other travel agents have followed our suit. And the results are 22% bookings are cancelled by passengers themselves for Turkey. The reason why, unlike Maldives, where we went ahead and boycotted Maldives, blocked all their flights and holiday packages, we did not do for Turkey is because Turkey is a layover for many tourists.
So you're now seeing this particular movement of boycotting Turkey, boycotting Turkey across the country. What do I mean? It's not just tourism, but for example, apples that come from Turkey has been pulled from Indian markets, as most of, in fact, these market federations have said, no, we will no longer keep these Turkish apples for sale in our markets. Marble imports from Turkey facing trader pushback as well right now. And some federations in some parts of the country have said, no, we will no longer source from Turkey. Their food items have been boycotted by retailers as well as by consumers. And then, of course, the Indian tourist footfall in Turkey has actually dropped in the last few days itself, dropping by 22%. And we'll get you that data in just a bit. And then there is, of course, the aspect of films, Indian films being shot in some of the most scenic locations in Turkey. Looks like that may not happen, as Indian film bodies, one after another, has been issuing statements urging for a ban cutting across film industries on shooting in Turkey. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually happens. But on the tourism front, let's get you a quick update coming in. So what we're seeing essentially, bookings for Azerbaijan as well as for Turkey decreasing by 60%. Cancellations have surged by 250% during this period. So in the last few days, the last 1 week alone, we can confirm for you that bookings for Azerbaijan and Turkey has decreased. Cancellation surging by 250%. This is India speaking in one voice against the two countries. And clearly at this point, you've got most travel platforms also saying that we will not provide any more holiday packages and no promotions for visiting Turkey or Azerbaijan. So like I said, India uniting really in this cause, saying any country that backs Pakistan so brazenly will pay the price as well. And so as Indians, we seem to have taken a collective stand right now to not indulge Turkey, not help the economy thrive in any way. So besides the statements that Turkey has made, how exactly have they backed Pakistan? I'll list it out for you. Just in the last few days, during Operation Sindoor and Pakistan's attempt to hit back, they got help from Turkey. Now, how did they get it? Essentially, they used Turkish drones to attack India. So Turkey is actually Pakistan's second largest arms supplier. The first, no prices for guessing, is China. Second is Turkey. And Pakistan used some of the drones, weapons that they received from Turkey. In fact, you have the kamikaze drones that they got in from Turkey. You got the Songur drones also, which Turkey gave them, which they're using. And the C-130J aircraft, the Super Hercules, part of the Turkish fleet, landed in Karachi on April 27th, before Operation Sindoor. But when there was a suspicion that India could strike, at that point, Pakistan was on high alert, seeking help from all of its allies, and Turkey delivered again. The Turkish corvette was docked at the Karachi port on May 2nd. So you had Turkey helping in every way they can, particularly along Karachi. Turkey also backed Pakistan despite India helping during the earthquake that had struck Turkey. And we'll talk about that in just a bit. I just want to put the focus on some of these weapons that Turkey provided to Pakistan. The Sindoor drones that I referred to. These were drones that Pakistan sent across into India, attempting to target civilian areas as well as target some of our defense establishments. But India successfully intercepted all of these drones, including the Turkish-made drones. These Sindoor drones can actually operate in coordinated groups as a swarm. And we had reported here on India Today how we saw these swarm drone movements by Pakistan while attempting to strike us at 26 locations, most of that Turkish-made. It is an unmanned aerial vehicle, which we told you about. The operational range is just about 10 kilometers and the flight time up to 30 minutes. So it is essentially used for exactly what Pakistan did, attempt to kind of swarm someone's airspace with these drones. The altitude is about 400 meters above ground level, 2,800 meters above the mean sea level. So it doesn't go very high. It's meant for small purposes, but meant to swarm you with huge numbers. It includes a daylight and IR camera as well. And also, as far as weapons go, it has a machine gun with 200 rounds, so it can fire up to 6 grenades as well, which could be a cause of concern for India if these drones had managed to reach the location that they'd wanted to. The effective range is 400 to 450 meters, and the takeoff weight is up to 45 kilos. These are the very drones that Pakistan attempted to use against India. And I'd like to bring in Sandeep Unithan for more on this. Sandeep, no surprise that Turkey is essentially the second largest arms supplier for Pakistan. But also, looking at the details that are emerging of how Turkey actually helped Pakistan in this current conflict, just right after India helped them in their time of need, is what's in fact needling Indians to now go ahead and boycott them. But just break down for us the ties between Turkey and Pakistan, particularly in defense, Sandeep.
Well, Akshita, Turkey and Pakistan have historically had very close ties right from the 1960s. But those ties have actually accelerated in recent times because the Turkish military-industrial complex has come of age. They are one of the leading nations when it comes to producing drones, combat drones of all kinds. There's a company called Boycott which makes a whole lot of unmanned aerial systems. They've been world leaders for the last 10 years in certain categories of drones, and Pakistan has always looked at drones as a force multiplier to use against India. So Pakistan is one of the largest clients of overseas Turkish drones, and they have, in the last 4 or 5 years, they've acquired a number of Turkish drones, whether it's the Bayraktar or the Sindoor, which you mentioned, various ranges, capabilities, and they're using Turkish expertise also to create a domestic Pakistan drone program. So what you just saw there is possibly the beginnings of a very major Pakistani investment in combat drones. So Turkey and Pakistan really very close, fraternal bonds. And also important to note is that at the height of this standoff post the Pahalgam terror strike, when India called out Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, Turkey chose to send a warship to Karachi in the middle of all this to signal Turkey's support for Pakistan through all of that. No other country sent a warship to Pakistan, but Turkey did that, clearly indicating where its alliances were in this current conflict. And now those made in Turkish drones, which are being targeting Indian civilians along the international border and the line of control, Turkey has a lot of explaining to do with those drones that we have done. It's almost like a betrayal of sorts. A lot of Indians will be feeling betrayed at this moment for the kind of assistance that we extended to Turkey in their hour of need when they were hit by a killer earthquake. It was Indian relief teams on the spot. You have Indian tourists there, going there year after year in record numbers. It's one of the highest increase in Indian tourist numbers into Turkey, and that is all, being called to question now at this moment.
No, very true. And I want to put the focus on one point Sandeep mentioned about the earthquake and how India helped. Thanks very much, Sandeep, for joining us. And let's just contrast the two, shall we, of how India actually stepped up, helped Turkey in their time of need, being one of the first countries to help. versus how Turkey is essentially returning the favor now. We launched Operation Dost after the 2023 earthquake because we said any country in need, we'll step in to help. What do we get in response is now Turkey providing all sorts of drones, equipment needed for Pakistan to strike us. So just contrast the two. The Operation Dost launched by us, which means we refer to Turkey as a Dost. And this is how our Dost treated us. As part of that particular operation, as part of that mission, we sent 250 plus rescue and medical personnel. You had multiple statements that came in from the Turkish government, from the rescue officials there. Let's move on from, in fact, this point. And there you have it. Rescue and medical personnel were sent 250 plus personnel on ground. On record, you had Turkish officials, the government, rescue officials, all recognizing India's great role in helping them overcome this disaster. So how does Turkey pay us back? They sent military operatives to ensure that the drones that they've sent for Pakistan, there are operators too who help Pakistan to push these drones in the direction they wanted to target civilians, innocents in India. Now, also, when there was a need for Turkey to get more help, we deployed 6 C-17 aircraft with aid, with equipment as well. Turkey has responded how? By going ahead and providing a Super Hercules to Pakistan in the build-up to Operation Sindoor. They've helped Pakistan coordinate the drone strikes by advising where to hit on Indian soil. Now, I'm going to continue these contrasts because it's glaring and I think the point needs to go across. We set up field hospitals for critical surgeries for every person in Turkey, every civilian who was injured. Clearly, it didn't mean anything for the Turkish government because what have they done? They've not just supplied arms consistently to Pakistan, but knew what the purpose is of these arms. Pakistan is a terror state. Everyone knows the writings on the wall of what these weapons are used for, and that was clear also in the last few days. We were among the first responders to reach Turkey for help. We've never had the best of relations with Turkey, but that didn't stop us. This was a humanitarian crisis. This was a tragedy, and that's why we launched Operation Dost, saying that we will always be the first ones to step up to help in a time of tragedy, in a time of disaster. At that point, 2023, Turkey sent out messages of thanks, but in reality, what they've done is they refer to the people of Pakistan as brothers. Erdogan speaks to Shehbaz Sharif, expressing his solidarity with Pakistan. So this is essentially why we're saying that India has been backstabbed by Turkey. Again, let me reiterate, India and Turkey have never had breakthrough ties, but after the kind of assistance that we provided them in the 2023 earthquake, you'd think that at least then Turkey would think twice before allowing and helping, actively abetting and helping a country while attempting to strike Indians, while attempting to target innocent civilians in India. I want to bring in a Foreign Affairs editor, Geeta Mohan, for more on really what we're planning to do diplomatically, because Geeta, the contrast is glaring here. India, we launched Operation Dost when Turkey was going through that very, very tough time. And how does Turkey respond? By going ahead and helping Pakistan attack us with drones, missiles, and whatnot. Diplomatically, is India going to be taking steps now against Turkey?
Right now, there is no information or confirmation, Akshita, of whether if there are diplomatic steps that are going to be taken against Turkey and China. The first steps that we saw were the steps that we've seen in the past also every time a country riles us. That is to look at the propaganda that's spread online, because that has become one of the most dangerous tools for these countries. And therefore, TRT World, a mouthpiece of or a government agency of the channel of Turkey, has been banned. And so has Global Times, government mouthpiece of the Chinese, spreading not just false propaganda, but also spreading Pakistani propaganda is the reason why it had become really troublesome and worrisome. So that's one of the first steps that the two countries India has taken in terms of trade between the two countries. While there's about a little over 5 billion of trade of exports to Turkey. With Azerbaijan, it's much lesser. But then these are also geopolitically, if you see, very important countries, and India has engaged them for a while now. The reason why we've had the operation, those sent assistance and aid to Turkey. But the fact of the matter is that it is not an unknown fact that Turkey has always sided with Pakistan. For many years, we suffered at the hands of Turkey and the likes at the OIC on the issue of Kashmir. And now you're looking at a more conservative, a more extreme government in Turkey with Erdogan at the helm of affairs. And things are not looking very good for India when it comes to Turkey. So yes, there could be some diplomatic repercussions to the decisions that are being taken. It's not just about decisions, Akshita. It's about the open statements that are being made. Friendly warning. I mean, there are countries who've kept quiet or who've been rather decent about it by just talking about de-escalation. But to warn India at this day and age will really not go down well. And it has not gone down well with New Delhi. There were meetings in the morning. I'm sure this entire issue also came up, the reason why we saw the decision on banning of some of the accounts. But again, we'll have to wait and see how India takes it further with Turkey and with China.
You know, in the morning, we saw some of these accounts being banned. We're talking about accounts linked to, media agencies that are public broadcasters in Turkey as well as in China. That block has, however, been lifted. So we'll see really what the government strategy is going forward. Thanks, Geeta, for joining us with those details. We're also putting out some figures, some data about trade between India and Turkey. What does that look like right now? There's imports, there's exports too, and one particular highlight here is that a lot of the drone parts that Turkey gets, India exports. And so that itself speaks volumes right now of why there's a need for a crackdown. I'd like to bring in Karishma Asudani of Business Today TV for more on this. Karishma, run us through what the government is thinking here. As far as trade goes, could we see some crackdown by India, much like what we did with Pakistan?
Akshita, for us, in our situation with Turkey, we are way on a way more comfortable path, because if you see, we live on a surplus deficit when it comes to with both Turkey and Azerbaijan. Our exports to them for FY25 were close to about $85 billion, while our imports were only close to $2 billion, and similar numbers coming in from Azerbaijan. In fact, even way lesser when it comes to Baku, because we have only traded with them in millions, and that too in really minimum numbers. Now, when it comes to trade and the products, Turkey is majorly dependent on us for pharma products, for agriculture, for grains, for textiles, for rice and tea, and so is Azerbaijan. For India, there is going to be no problem, because we always have other markets to dump these products to, with whom we also share stronger bilateral relationships, like be it Latin America or we could go to parts of Africa or even parts of Vietnam and Singapore, where textiles will do really well. So it's rather going to be more problematic for Turkey, who is economically very much dependent in terms of trade aspects with India. And if they have to divert their trade prospects, keeping in mind that we may want to pull back from this diplomatic relationship, then it's going to be way more costlier for them and will strain them economically.
All right. Thanks very much, Karishma, for joining us with those details. We'll track, of course, the latest updates that come in, particularly from the government, on whether they really plan to punish Turkey for going ahead and backing Pakistan so blatantly. But that's not the only aspect. We've spoken of tourism, we've spoken of trade, and also, of course, of the defense deals between Pakistan and Turkey. But here's also another interesting piece of information. 7 of India's busiest airports, including Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru, they're all serviced by a company called Celebi Aviation. It's a Turkish origin company. Despite Turkey's hostile stance post-Pahalgam, Celebi continues to handle critical ground operations, and now rising security concerns and social media outrage are fueling calls to cancel these contracts to cut ties with Turkish aviation firms. All the details on that story in our next report.
Seven of India's 10 busiest airports, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, Ahmedabad and Cochin, all have one thing in common: a connection with Turkey. All these nerve centers of Indian aviation are largely serviced by one company, Celebi, a company with origins in Turkey, a country that has directly and brazenly supported Pakistan's aggression and hostilities against India in the post-Pahalgam days. Celebi Aviation India has a stranglehold over a range of airport services in 9 major airports. These include the 5 biggest airports in India. The company handles everything from passenger services and load control and flight operations to ramp services. Celebi also handles general aviation services, cargo and postal services, warehouses and bridge operation, with access to the most sensitive areas of the airport. The numbers are mind-boggling. In a recent interview, the company revealed it was handling 100,000 Indian flights every year, as well as nearly 550,000 tons of cargo. While the central government is still silent on letting a Turkish company handle these sensitive operations, social media is not. It is in fact blowing up with demands that Celebi be booted out in the Operation Sindoor aftermath and all contracts be terminated. There are calls to boycott the company along with all things Turkish, with social media users questioning why Celebi Aviation has been given ground handling and cargo at New Delhi and other Indian airports which have sensitive military areas. Some posts have even suggested a role of one of the daughters of Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in the company. Others have backed the claim and demanded an immediate security review of the company. Celebi is not the only company in the aviation sector feeling the heat. India's largest airline, Indigo, has also been hit by severe social media turbulence. Indigo not only has a code-share partnership with Turkish Airlines and Corendon Airlines, but also leases its aircraft from both for domestic and international operations. Indigo also has daily Istanbul flights between Delhi and Mumbai. Air India Express is also feeling the heat, having signed a deal in February with Turkish Technic for the maintenance of its Boeing 737 fleet.
Well, sources in the Ministry of Civil Aviation tell us that they're aware of the social media outreach and the Boycott Turkey campaign. However, any action will be dependent on the intervention of Ministry of External Affairs, as there are diplomatic ties involved between India and Turkey. Well, it's a wait-and-watch situation. Karishma Asdani reporting for Business Today Television, New Delhi.
So amid all of these calls to boycott all things from Turkey, the JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, suspended its memorandum of understanding with a university in Turkey. The İnönü University, JNU, has cited national security concerns in its statement, saying, and I quote, "Due to national security considerations, the MOU between JNU and İnönü University stands suspended until further notice. JNU stands with the nation." This is what I meant by when I said that, every single part of the country right now, there's a different kind of manner in which this boycott Turkey call is actually translating. So we're talking about in produce, in apples, in tourism, in education, that impact being felt. All right, let's move on and talk about really Operation Sindoor. There's still details trickling in about the locations that we hit as part of Operation Sindoor, the air bases, the military installations. And now it turns out, this is an India Today world exclusive, the Pakistan government's VVIP jet was very, very close to the IAF strike zone on several days, particularly on May 10th. Flight tracking data and exclusive satellite imagery reviewed by India Today's open source investigation team has suggested that a VVIP aircraft matching the description used by the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was present. Beat this, at the Noor Khan Air Base around the time of the IAF strikes on May 10th, highlighting clearly the strategic sensitivity and vulnerability of Pakistan's most important air base. And the question to ask here is whether we intentionally struck knowing that this VVIP jet movement was around to send across a direct message to the corridors of power in Pakistan. Let me bring in Ankit Kumar, who's accessed these images, who's analyzed them to tell us exactly who is the target, Ankit, of these strikes and also how there were jets flying. Perhaps with Shehbaz Sharif, we can't confirm that, but VVIP jets flying very, very close to exactly where we hit.
Well, Akshita, Pakistan government operates 3 Gulf streams for VVIP operations. When we say VVIP operations, we mean the president, the prime minister, the military chief, the foreign minister, and the prime minister's family. So when on 10th of May, this VVIP airbase came under Air Force attack by the Indian Air Force, we wanted to see if any of these VVIP aircrafts were there. So what we did, we matched the aircraft tracking data with the satellite pictures, and the result is astonishing. On your screen is this aircraft. This aircraft is so important because it matches the specifications used by Pakistan's Prime Minister. Now, viewers can ask, how are we so sure? It can be any other aircraft, right? So what we did was, we pulled out the specifications, we applied an AI model, we also spoken to experts, and everything suggested that this aircraft matches the specification of the aircraft that is used by the Pakistan Prime Minister. Now remember, the impact site is only 435 meters away. So if India was the aggressor, if India wanted to teach Pakistan a stronger message, maybe hurt them somewhere, India could have targeted the aircraft, but it did not, because our response was proportionate. And there was another Gulf stream, which should have been here, not seen in this picture, that was used by Pakistan military chief Asim Munir. But the key difference between this aircraft and the other aircraft is that the tail of Asim Munir's aircraft is blue, not white.
Okay, very, very interesting details that Ankit is getting us there. And if really these VVIP jets were so close to the strike locations, it's not a mere coincidence. It's clearly India's strategy also. We knew these movements and so decided to choose strategically each one of these locations. Thanks very much, Ankit, for joining us with those details. Let's cut across to a news break coming in. So the Indian Air Force bypassed and jammed Pakistan's Chinese-supplied air defense systems, completing the mission in just 23 minutes and thereby demonstrating India's technological edge. Now, this is a statement that's come in from the government, which confirms that, yes, we managed to do all of this, our strikes, in just 23 minutes by going ahead and jamming Pakistan's air defense system supplied, of course, by China. And this tells you exactly why Pakistan sought a ceasefire. They stood no chance. They had absolutely no eyes on the sky as their air defense was completely destroyed. IAF had jammed it and completed its mission in a matter of 23 minutes as they had planned, our forces executing it to perfection. And that's what's led to Pakistan also pushing for a ceasefire. Remember, mind you, Pakistan didn't call once but called twice, seeking a ceasefire. And let's get you all of the images that have come in so far of the air bases that have been hit in Pakistan by India. We've put out complete proof, evidence of what's really happened at each of these air bases as part of Operation Sindoor. High-resolution satellite images tell you exactly what's happened. Even as Pakistan denies it all, pictures are proof. Here's more.
As Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid a surprise visit to the Adhampur Air Base on May 13th, one image stood out, demolishing Pakistan's disinformation campaign in one stroke. It showed Prime Minister waving at Jawans with a MiG-29 fighter jet and a fully intact S-400 air defense system right behind him. It was the very system Pakistan claimed to have hit. No smoke, no wreckage, just proof, framed and undeniable. Prime Minister Modi was calm, composed and called out Pakistan's bluff. As Vande Mataram echoed across the airstrip, Modi was not just there to thank the Air Force. He was fact-checking Pakistan in real time. While Pakistan spun fiction, satellites captured the facts. Exclusive images accessed by India Today network reveal a trail of destruction across 6 major Pakistani air bases. Sukur aircraft shelters reduced to rubble. Rahim Yar Khan, a 43-foot wide crater, gouged into its only runway. In Moshav Sargodha, 2 craters and charred military trucks at what Pakistan calls its Air Force crown jewel. At Noor Khan, just 10 kilometers from Pakistan's military headquarters, vital transport aircraft were struck. Jacobabad, once a NATO stronghold, saw hangars and possible F-16 support facilities hit. And Bholari, a modern PAF base housing AEWACs, showed signs of precision damage to hangars likely sheltering radar planes. They were coordinated, high-precision retaliatory strikes launched in response to Pakistan's failed intrusion. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, Congress MP Shashi Tharoor has been going viral for his praise of the government's handling of the India-Pakistan conflict and Operation Sindoor. Here's an excerpt of the conversation that Rajdeep Sardesai had with Tharoor that's gone viral when Tharoor speaks of the India-Pakistan relations and India's crackdown on terror.
So listening to you, I get a sense that you're giving Narendra Modi and his government 10 on 10 or 9.5 on 10 for both the way they conducted Operation Sindoor, handled the Pahalgam attack, and even handled the world diplomatically. There are others who are questioning, even in your own party, whether Mr. Modi has allowed Kashmir to get internationalized, whether to allow an American president to announce a ceasefire between India and Pakistan is setting a dangerous precedent. Am I to understand that you're giving 9.5 or 10 out of 10 to Prime Minister Modi, which is unusual, remember, for an opposition leader to do so?
Rajdeep, it's not my place to award marks to anybody, let alone my betters, let alone the head of our government. So I'm not awarding any marks for anybody. All I'm saying right now is I believe that the matters that were under our control, namely how to conduct this operation, including its naming it, its presentation of it, the information briefings, all that were very well done. If you ask me whether Mr. Trump announcing this ceasefire was a good idea, it was a terrible idea. But if you're implying that we could have controlled it, or that perhaps a chief minister from another, a prime minister from another party could have controlled Mr. Trump better, well, I'm very happy to wish you good luck in doing that, Rajdeep. I think this is a gentleman who escapes such easy control. And therefore, I don't know whether it's entirely appropriate to score political points off Mr. Trump's shoulders, because Mr. Trump is Mr. Trump. And I don't think anybody in any foreign country is able to control what he does and how he does it. All I can say is that India has to make it very clear to the world, to Mr. Trump, to the Pakistanis, and to the Indian public, whether we're going to do what Mr. Trump implies we're going to do. And I think it's already become very clear we're not. We're not going to give the Pakistanis the benefit of a negotiation that they have done nothing to earn. We're not going to give them the privilege of sitting across the table with them as a reward for their having killed 26 civilians in Pahalgam and a further 22 in Poonch and sent 59 to hospital as well. Their behavior has been egregious, to say the least, and we're not going to be talking lovey-dovey with the Pakistanis for a long time to come. As far as the question of rehyphenation and internationalization and so on, let somebody try and get us to talk to the Pakistanis, and we'll tell them exactly why we won't. I think we can't judge international affairs on the basis of one Truth Social post or one headline. We have to look at a pattern of behavior. We have to look at what follows next.
No, the reason I asked you that was, Dr. Tharoor, you've seen the way your party's reacted. your party officially has called for a special session of parliament. You're a member of parliament. They've called a special session of parliament that's been reiterated, saying we need all the issues underlying this ceasefire to be put up before parliament. We need a full debate. You clearly are saying there is no need for a parliament special session. You seem to suggest that, look, these are...
I'm sorry, where you got that from. I've supported the demand from the very beginning. The party has every right to make such a demand. And in fact, I pointed out that in 1962, when we were at war with China, we actually managed to have a debate in Parliament, a special session of Parliament, which the Prime Minister personally attended and responded to questions. And in those days, there was no anti-defection law, so some of the toughest questions came to him from his own party, and he was able to handle that. So I think a parliamentary session is entirely healthy. I've done my part as chairman of the External Affairs Committee in requesting the Foreign Secretary to come and give us a briefing, which he's going to do next Monday. That's the prerogative of the committee. And that's his duty, and he's accepted that duty. So that's part of the parliamentary accountability process that is so important in a parliamentary democracy like ours.
Okay, we'll track all the reactions that come into that rather viral interview with Congress MP Shashi Tharoor. But let's get you some of the images of the Tiranga Yatra celebrating our armed forces. And this happened across the country. It's the second day of the Tiranga rally that took place across the country. And you had BJP leaders, including chief ministers, who participated in these rallies, these yatras, to honor the armed forces after Operation Sindoor. Leaders were seen taking to the streets on bikes, waving the tricolour and celebrating with citizens. You had Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, the Delhi Chief Minister Rekha Gupta, and several others taking part in these Tiranga Yatras. Here are some of those reactions.
पाकिस्तान के द्वारा की गई हिमाकत को जिस मजबूती के साथ भारत के बहादुर जवानों ने जिस मजबूती के साथ उसका जवाब दिया, दुनिया को संदेश भी दिया कि हम छेड़ेंगे नहीं, लेकिन कोई छेड़ेगा तो फिर उसको छोड़ेंगे भी नहीं। और भारत ने वह करके दिखाया है, जिसके सम्मान में आज पूरे देश के अंदर भारतीय जनता पार्टी के द्वारा ये तिरंगा यात्रा प्रारंभ की गई है।
देश के सम्मान की जो लड़ाई सरहद पे हमारी सेनाएं लड़ रही हैं, उनको सलाम करते हैं। देश के प्रधानमंत्री जी को कोटि कोटि प्रणाम करते हैं। और जिस तरीके से विश्व पटल पे भारत ने अपने सम्मान को बचाते हुए और देश की रक्षा करते हुए आतंकवाद का खात्मा किया, आज पूरा देश एकजुट है, सशक्त है और अपनी लड़ाई, अपने अधिकार की लड़ाई, अपने सम्मान की लड़ाई लड़ने के लिए तैयार है।
आज हम सब यहाँ पर आप देख रहे हैं, सब भारतीय आज यहाँ इंडिया गेट पर आए हैं ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के लिए, हमारी आर्म्ड फोर्सेस को थैंक यू कहने के लिए, धन्यवाद करने के लिए। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर न्याय का नया संकल्प है। ये मोदी का नया भारत है जो ना रुकता है, ना थमता है, ना झुकता है, ना माफ करता है। और आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने भारत की नीति बहुत स्पष्ट कर दी है। टेरर और टॉक्स एक साथ नहीं होंगी, लहू और पानी एक साथ नहीं बहेगा, ट्रेड और टेरर एक साथ नहीं होगा।
इस पार्टी इससे पहले पूर्व से ही जय हिंद यात्रा कर रही है और देश के सैनिकों का हौसला बढ़ाने के लिए, उनके शौर्य को सलाम करने के लिए पूरे देश में तिरंगे के साथ यात्रा कर रही है।
Let's get you our daily fact check. A whole lot of content you see on social media is fake. The latest one doing the rounds is that a man replaced a Modi poster after India's Operation Sindoor. Now, the reality is that no such incident happened. These videos have been doing the rounds. It didn't happen. The fact is, and once we analyzed the video, we found that the video was digitally altered. So no, nobody's replaced Prime Minister Modi's poster after India's Operation Sindoor. Don't believe everything you see on social media. And here on India Today, we'll continue separating fact from fiction. Thanks very much for tuning in.